That's what every government.
A parallel ticketing structure, a multiple core is a complementary core.
What I will not encourage Christians to do is to carry dagger and follow anybody. No.
Join us on The Breakfast, 7 a.m., Monday to Friday.
Inflation drops for fifth straight month. It's now 17.01% for the month of August.
Edo State goes tough on unvaccinated civil servants, bars them from entering their offices.
The papers are in today, and we'll be having an analyst join us to review the headlines. Welcome to The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. It's a very, very beautiful Thursday morning, the 16th of September 2021. We're excited that you've decided to join us this morning for an analysis of the current affairs in Nigeria. I am Anetta Felix.
And I am Osaugi Ogbon. Good morning and welcome to Plus TV Africa's The Breakfast. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, so our first top trending story this morning takes us to Edo State. Like our first took us to Edo State yesterday, talking about University of Benin and how the school was indefinitely shut down over students' protest. In Edo State this time around, it's over vaccination cards. The Edo State government had announced that it would deny entry to workers who had not received COVID-19 vaccination and, of course, had a COVID-19 vaccination card to prove it. Maybe the state civil servants did not think the government, was, taking that very seriously until they showed up at their places of work yesterday and were locked out. We have videos of, civil servants in Edo State just loitering around the entrance to their offices, just sitting on the pavements there, denied entry into their offices. There are signboards, there are banners, hanging outside the gates of those buildings saying, no vaccination card, no entry. And it's really caused quite a stir on social media. People have been asking, is the COVID-19 vaccination compulsory? What exactly, does the government seek to achieve? And this really is interesting to note. I mean, take a look at the secretariat buildings there in Edo State. People just standing outside, unable to get access into their offices. Let's recall, like I mentioned, that the Edo State government had said this, that if you don't have your vaccination card, you won't be able to enter the government office. And also a former special advisor on media and communications to Governor Godwin Obaseki, the state governor, also forgot his own vaccination card. I mean, he mentioned when he was interviewed that the governor's directives had just taken effect just yesterday, Wednesday, and that he came into the office, but he forgot his vaccination card. He was refused entry and that he would have to go home to get his card to access the government house. I think we have videos of residents of Edo State and civil servants just speaking their minds regarding this matter. Take a listen.
Say we not take vaccine, make it not enter inside gates. And we don't know what to use and mean. In one use the vaccine, keep people. We are not in support of those vaccines because like me now they sick. Now they sick, now they take medicine. I don't want to take, and I'm not go take. May our Basaka and family go take them. You understand?
Lock us out because of the vaccination.
First of all, I thank him for trying to protect us from this coronavirus. But one thing I wanted to know also is that vaccination is not mandatory. It's not compulsory. It's something you take out of your free will. You understand? You should not try to make this state to look like there is no law. I learned that there's a court of competent jurisdiction that are restricting from buying people from entering their office for taking the vaccine. But now I want to let him know that he should allow us to take it out of our own free will. Do you understand? For example, even me, I don't believe there's COVID-19 in this state. If there's COVID-19 in Nigeria, due to the level of our sanitation, we'll see people dying like flies on the streets.
Wow, that really was the thoughts and minds of Edo civil servants talking about the COVID-19 vaccination, refusing to take the vaccination, to say it's not compulsory. And really, this is quite a debate. Is the COVID-19 vaccination compulsory? Some people, say that, it should be their decision. That man there said he's not sick, he doesn't feel unwell, so why should he get vaccinated? But actually, the COVID-19 vaccination is not compulsory. The federal government does not, mandate people to take the COVID-19 vaccination. They have been encouraging people to do so. We understand that there's a vaccine hesitancy in Nigeria, and people have just been encouraged. But I think that if the government really wants to ramp up the numbers for people to begin to take the vaccination, it is steps like this that they resort to, saying if you want to get access into certain buildings, then you have to present a vaccination card.
Well, the conversation on vaccine hesitancy has existed in Nigeria for a long time, not just with COVID-19, including even child vaccination. There's times when there's been chaos, even in the southeast, because of rumors concerning vaccination. And so it has always been a very huge role of the government to ensure that proper information is shared with regards to vaccination and its benefits. We've, a few times here stated that the Nigerian government hasn't done well enough with regards to the information and publicity with regards to vaccination and COVID-19. Mm-hmm. And, we've repeatedly said that the Ministry of Information, and the National Orientation Agency and some of all those bodies haven't done well enough with, that regard. And one reason, that's important to point out is one of the things that the last guy who was interviewed said, mm-hmm. that, he doesn't believe that there is even COVID-19, that if there was, you would see people dying like flies. Those were the words that he used on the streets, which I'm not shocked to hear from, a person in Nigeria, because that's what they expect. That's, that's the narrative that they probably have with regards to COVID-19 and how deadly it is. And since you're not seeing that, you would, even not just in Edo State, across the country, I'm sure there's millions of people that you would ask that would have the same thoughts, that they don't believe that there's COVID-19 because they haven't seen anyone die. They haven't seen anything like that happen around them. So it's very, very important that the government does what is necessary to educate people better on COVID-19 and the need to take the vaccine. I'm due for my second vaccination today, so I'm going to be taking it right after work. But another thing is the anti-vaxxers, as they're popularly called across the world. In the United States, in France there was a huge riot. In the US, there is huge numbers of people who are called anti-vaxxers who don't believe that they should take a vaccination. Mm-hmm. They should be forced to take a vaccine. But in those societies, there's more rights, and the government respects some of all those rights. They would try to encourage you and tell you that yes, you may not be able to enter certain places, or it started with wearing a mask. You cannot enter certain buildings without wearing a mask. I've seen a lot of people getting arrested in the airport.
I've seen people receive ice cream for getting vaccinated.
So the conversation might be a little calmer in other climes, and mm-hmm. the approach that the government has, might be a little different. The Edo State governor may also be trying to use his own methods of trying to encourage people to take the vaccine and make them understand how important it is. But for people who don't believe that they should be forced to take the vaccine, you also cannot force them. You have to find ways to convince them that the vaccine is not dangerous and it's not in any way going to be harmful to your health. And that's what the Edo State government needs to do. I don't also think that it is ripe at this time for the Edo State government to enforce such laws. If you look at the numbers of vaccines that are available in Edo State, I remember that I think they received about 40,000 mm-hmm. sometime last week. And the number of available vaccines compared to the number of workers that they have, in the state. State government workers, federal government workers. I don't think it's also fair that he can do that, except he has given a time frame and he knows that there have been vaccines available for many, many months, and people don't seem to be taking them. Then maybe you can do that. But the public enlightenment and the education concerning vaccination is where the government should start from, and that's where they should
exactly. That's even one of the concerns that I've seen people raise online. Some people said they just went to work and saw that they were locked out, that they had no clue, they had no idea that there was such a directive in place. So really, the government needs to do a lot regarding information. Putting out circulars, engaging the mass media to let people know that this is what's going to happen, and you need to give them enough time to go ahead and register, because sometimes you open the website, I've heard people say it doesn't load, it doesn't come up. So you need to give people time, not just say from tomorrow. That's one of the challenges we've had with government, with the Okada ban, with so many things. You need to inform people ahead of time, give them time to make the adjustment to their lives, and not just say from tomorrow, here's the new law.
And also make vaccines available. Edo State has, population in millions. You can't have 40,000 vaccines and expect that everyone would suddenly, get vaccinated. Both my parents have been vaccinated, but that was months ago, during the first vaccination wave. So there has to be more time and more, public enlightenment with regards to vaccination before you start to take such steps.
Yes, and talking about steps, the Akwa Ibom State government has taken a big one. And it's one that Southern governors decided to take by a September 1st deadline. And it's that the Akwa Ibom State House of Assembly on Tuesday passed the bill on the prohibition of open grazing into law. Now, it's titled a bill for a law to prohibit open grazing of livestock and provide for the establishment of ranches and livestock administration, regulation and control. It was passed after it was read the third time on the floor of the House during the plenary in Akwa Ibom. Basically, this is the news. This is the news of the season. States are passing the anti-open grazing bill into law. The ban is already in place in states like Ebonyi, Abia, Bayelsa, Rivers, Oyo, Ekiti, Ondo, and Lagos. When we talk about the grazing situation, the cattle, farmers, herders clashes, it's been one of the most controversial issues. And people even say, why should cattle, including yourself, why should cattle be such a big deal? Why should cattle cause such a controversy in Nigeria? But we know that it's because of the security issues that, have followed the fact that cattle can just seem to graze and roam freely across the country. So states are taking this very seriously. And one thing I really want to pick from this is, it's good to see that state governors could come together to say, let's do something about this. They set a deadline, even though most states did not meet the September 1st deadline, but we've seen lots of states begin to sign this anti-open grazing bill into law. But it makes me realize that when there's a will, there's a way. There are lots of bills on the floor of the House regarding Child Protection Acts, acts to protect women, acts for, you understand what I'm trying to say? Like bills that can move the country forward, legislature that can take us to the next level where we need to be. But you would see that those bills will stall for years and years and years. And you wonder why. But you see this anti-open grazing bill, it seems people are speaking with one mind. They seem to have resolved that one of the ways to end these security issues is to stop open grazing. And in just a few days, in just a few weeks, you see states passing it into law. Let's use and drive that same energy for other bills that can, better the lives of citizens in Nigeria.
Yeah. So the thing with politics is, it's a game of numbers. It's also a game of, convincing and cajoling and, discussions here and there. The reason certain bills might stall is maybe because they haven't been able to, get as many people interested in that bill or get as many people, to see the value in that bill. The conversations are not loud enough in that regard. For this one, the conversation has been loud enough for years, and for state governors who have always complained that they're not in charge or not in control of the security architecture in their states. Yes, they receive security votes every month, but they're still not in charge of security architecture. They can't order the GOCs or order the state commissioners of police. They can't, give such orders to protect their people. The Amotekun also and Ibubeagu, is it Ibubeagu? Yeah.
And ESN as well?
Yes. Or not ESN. ESN is not of government controlled. Some of all those groups aren't fully armed or financed well enough to be state security architecture. So until they get there, they don't have full control. But what they have is their State House of Assembly, and they have laws. They have the power to make laws and to, at least enforce some of all those laws at a particular level. And that's what the state governors are trying to do. So since we cannot by ourselves protect our people with the security agencies that are currently existing, then we will be able to make certain laws to at least make a difference. Everyone expected that by September 1st, all the state governors in the South who had been at that meeting and had that agreement would have passed those bills by now, but there's still some states that are lacking. Enugu State, I think, passes yesterday. Ogun State, I think, also did the same thing, and then Akwa Ibom. So it is simply just governors doing what they think is necessary. It may not be 100% the answer to the challenge with regards to insecurity, but it's a step. And they've seen where the challenge has been, through cattle grazing. And so they will take that step. As we move further, I'm sure that they would also open up other conversations and see what more laws that they can put in place to ensure that the people are protected. They would be able to save more lives, because this whole, conversation, the whole cattle grazing conversation has been going on for many, many, many years. But in the last 6, years has been at its peak. We've never seen it on this level before. The death, the murder, the atrocities that have been committed in the name of cattle grazing have been, way more than Nigeria has ever experienced. And so it's important that they do what they think is necessary to protect their people. And you can't, hold it against them.
Not at all. And beyond the passage of these bills into law, I want us to begin to hear conversations regarding implementation, because most times you get these bills passed into law and they just die on paper. Let's begin to see what steps the state governments are doing, or what steps they're taking, what mechanisms they're putting in place. Are they having more border control around their states? Are they, communicating with the locals to say, if you see a cattle in your area walking through your streets, this is a helpline you can call. Our police stations or our policemen going to be stationed around certain areas. So let's begin to see the ways you can enforce that, the ways you can implement that, and not just say, oh, we've passed it into law and that's that. Our next top trending story is something that is about someone that has given us so much joy as a Nigerian and as Africans as a whole. And it's the person of Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who we all celebrated when she became the Director General of the World Trade Organization, WTO. And she's now been named Time Magazine's one of the most 100 influential people for 2021. Now, that Time Magazine's annual list of 100 influential people gives recognition to people whose ideas, whose example, their talent, or their discoveries transform the world that we live in. The list was released yesterday on Wednesday, and it placed, these people into 5 categories: titans, pioneers, artists, leaders, and icon. In March 2021, Okonjo-Iweala became the first African to lead the WTO, and she was included in the leaders category alongside President of the United States, Joe Biden, alongside Kamala Harris, U.S. Vice President, alongside President of China, Xi Jinping, and Narendra Modi, Prime Minister of India. We've seen people respond to this. We've seen Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, Duke and Duchess of Sussex saying that this Nigeria's former Minister of Finance knows how to get things done. They praise her work, for everything she's been doing at the helm of affairs at the WTO. They also talk about, how she's been trying to galvanize support for African countries regarding finance and, of course, regarding vaccination and world unity. So congratulations to Okonjo-Iweala one more time. Keep making us proud.
3 points. The first one is this is the same person that a group of people a few years ago were asking that her degree or her honorary degree or something like that be withdrawn from a certain university outside the country because of politics. Those same people today will celebrate her. I had to mention that because of how dangerous sometimes we play politics in Nigeria because of personal issues that we have, or because we are simply, well, not we, some people are completely sycophants who would do anything whatsoever to pull a person down simply, just because they're not in the same political party as they are. So Okonjo-Iweala has continued to excel. Another 2 points that I will make, first of all, is the conversation that I had with a person a few days ago about the quality of the Nigerian person. He had argued that the reason we continue to have terrible leadership at different levels is because the Nigerian himself, doesn't have the qualities for leadership, or the Nigerian himself is corrupt, or some of all of that. And I had to say absolutely not. I
disagree.
Because there's a lot of people who have exceptional qualities as Nigerians that excel here in Nigeria and outside the country. Nigeria is blessed with the human resources that a lot of countries envy, even in the West. Envy the amount of human resources that Nigeria has, the brilliant minds that Nigeria has.
And our population.
Okonjo-Iweala, besides population, the quality. The Okonjo-Iweala is an example of those kind of people. There's a few people that you can point to in the world today that you would say these are exceptional human beings and they are Nigerians and they would excel in any field that you place them. She is that person, and she has continued to be that person for the length of her career. And she's not in any way going to go down. The third one is the importance, and she has continued, to make me love the conversation concerning women in leadership, and how Nigeria has some of, the best female leaders that the world has seen, but we still are failing to allow for a wider space for women in leadership. Angela Merkel is one person who I think she's stepping down, she's stepping down pretty soon. And, I've seen online, the amount of praise that she has also received. There are people who criticize and say, oh, what is the huge thing that she did? But simply being able to hold one of the world's biggest countries for that long and hold, it together without any crisis, without any major challenges, and continue to put Germany where it is in the world map is a huge deal that she was able to achieve. And she has continued to be that person. And she was the first example sometime this week that I pointed out to say, okay, I'm still hungry to see more women in leadership roles in Nigeria and across the world. Chimamanda Adichie. There's many, many names that you can point out that have done so well that we pray and we wish that we can put these people in positions of leadership. Okonjo-Iweala has been in a leadership position before, but we need to have more of those conversations across Nigeria and encourage more women to get into the electoral positions, get voted for, and fill up those positions. And I'm very, very 100% sure that would see a huge difference.
Indeed. Let's take a break here. We're done with Top Trending. Let's now see what's trending across our national newspapers after the break. Stay with us.
It is engagement we need to have.
Those who suffer miscarriages are never taken into account.
Members of the National Assembly are also influence peddlers.
You are sitting on Nigerians' money.
From the barbing, I pay my rent. On the barbing, I send my children to school.
A consultative engagement.
No any tangible notification before they ban us.
It's one thing for people to be at your back and the heat of the moment, and another thing for them to still be with you when push comes to shove.
I will do everything to take Lagos out of the national grid.
Hello and welcome. It's Nimasa This Week, the voice of maritime. Nimasa This Week is brought to you by the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency. Statutorily mandated to ensure that there's regulation and promotion of matters affecting our waters. NIMASA bears responsibility for search and rescue, shipping development, and ship registration.
Nimasa This Week, the voice of maritime, showing on this channel.
Great to have you back here on The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. Now let's go to Off the Press, where we have a quick review of the major stories making headlines across Nigeria today. I'm kicking off with the Punch newspapers just before we introduce our guest. It should be on your screen in a bit. And the big one there is talking about the loan request. Once again, it says National Assembly defends Buhari's $4.9 billion loan plan. APC, PDP clash over debt. All countries engage in deficit financing. We're still within borrowing limits, says the Senate. Buhari's loans for budget financing, not for looting, as done by PDP, says the ruling party. It also says here APC borrowing to finance corrupt lifestyles of its leaders and their cronies, alleged the PDP. AGF writes 36 governors, hints recovery of stamp duty arrears. And we can also see on the Punch this morning, bread, cereals and others push food inflation to 20.30%. Nigeria piles up 2.36 trillion naira debt stock in 3 months. Also, Southern secessionists, not different from Boko Haram and ISWAP, says Bajabia Miller. Abiodun eyes federal government's 83.5 billion naira loan for Ogun Cargo Airport and others. Gunmen invade Lagos farmhouse, kidnap businessman, shoot passerby. And the lecturer sues Sanwo-Olu and CP over a COVID-19 test, demands 65 million naira damages. Other stories on the Punch. Reps demand probe of customs killings in Oyo communities. And reconstruction of Ota-Abeokuta Road will cost 56 billion naira, says Fashola. That's all we can take on the Punch this morning.
Let's go to the Daily Independent newspaper. Yoruba Nation agitators bond with IPOB worries presidency. Bajabia Miller said separationists leading nation to destruction. Says reps to prioritize effort at firming security architecture. Above the headline on the Daily Independent, Uniben students kidnap VC, kidnapping quote, force her to rescind decision on school closure. Strike. Federal government, doctors' negotiation ends in deadlock. Passport seizure, ex-Rivers governor, Odili on EFCC watch list. Immigration tells court. Inflation records fifth decline in 2021, drops to 17.01% in August. Niger records 100 cholera cases, cholera deaths in 4 months. Minister says Nigeria would lift the ban on Twitter in a few days. PDP National Convention, Southwest leaders make strong demand for chairman slot. Federal government okays 38.4 billion naira road projects in Anambra, Benue, Bayelsa, others. Southeast National Assembly caucus to interface with federal government, others over Nnamdi Kanu.
All right, so now moving on from the Punch to, or the Daily Independent, to the leadership newspapers. It says here, North, Southeast, eye presidential ticket. Southwest, 6-party chairmanship. Consultations on zoning intensify. Ugwuanyi committee begins sitting today. It says new chairman can't assume office until Secondus leaves or resigns. Also, strike. Federal government and resident doctors agree to negotiate. COVID-19, Edo bars on vaccinated workers from offices. Okonjo-Iweala makes Times world's 100 most influential people. And also, Akwa Ibom, Enugu, Osun sign anti-open grazing laws. Federal government to states, no stamp duty recoveries for 5 years. And also Nigeria's debt hits 35.5 trillion naira as APC defends borrowing.
Let's now take a look at the Daily Trust newspaper. Naira's free fall continues as Nigerians rush to hold dollars. $1 sales at 565 naira. Citizens opt for foreign goods at all cost. Government officials, elites in rush for forex. COI spends $55 billion on foreign consultants and workers. 2023, North set to pick PDP ticket as Southwest leaders demand chairmanship. Nigeria's debt profile hits 35.4 trillion naira. Stamp duty, Malami writes 36 governors, says no recoveries. How fighter jets killed locals in Yobe State. Those are the stories we're looking at this morning. Good morning to our guest, public affairs analyst, Mr. Ezekiel Iyaitok.
Yeah, good morning. Always a pleasure to be on Plus TV Africa.
Morning to you, sir.
I want us to begin with the top story on, the Punch newspaper. And it's about the loan that President Muhammadu Buhari has written the Senate for. He wants to borrow $4.9 billion. And he says that's to fund our 2022 budget. And that's also to fund infrastructure projects across all local government areas of the state. The National Assembly is defending the president, saying that the Senate is saying that all countries engage in borrowing and debt financing, and that we're still within our borrowing limits. But the PDP is saying that, this borrowing is just to fund the corrupt lifestyles of Nigeria's president and, the leadership. What do you think?
I am actually extremely worried, really concerned as... Well, those of us that are November 1, I'll be 58. So those of us on the higher side, we think of what our children are going to see in future, and it bothers me, and it also bothers me that a lot of the people in government are people that are far older than myself, some are in their 70s. And it's as if these guys just don't care about the younger generation. It's like, let's make our name. Let's do whatever we can do now so that we can make our name. Notwithstanding the prognosis, the higher implications of the actions. When you borrow to repay. And I want to see the end game plan of this administration on repayment of our debt. And they keep talking about infrastructure. To a very great extent, this makes sense. If the infrastructure is put with first, emphasis on the people, in which case we're talking in terms of human capital development. I wish that my government was borrowing this amount of money to ensure that every single primary school child is introduced to ICT. Going into secondary school, they are well equipped for the future. And that every Nigerian student in every tertiary institution has a laptop, a personalized, specialized laptop where programming is made compulsory, whether you read religion, you read linguistics, you read history, you're an architect, you read medicine, it doesn't matter. You must understand programming because the Nigerian system has been able to look into the next 4 years, 6 years, 10 years, 15 years, and realize that ICT is the way of the future. And then the president is no longer Minister of Petroleum, but Minister of ICT, then we can see a thinking of the future of our children. But all this, we are borrowing to the infrastructure rail program, whether it's going to Maraba or it's going to wherever. I'm not okay. I'm not satisfied. So the explanation of, we are still within the threshold is pedestrian. It doesn't make sense. And I think the time has come for us as Nigerians to wise up, to take our future in our hands and to determine the leadership trajectory that we must take. The time has come when we must start to settle for cerebral governance. This political governance has given us that title of the poverty capital of the world. The time has come for the youth to wake up and decide what they want their future to be like. This is not about protest. Forget about protest. I'm not a fan of protest. It's a time for strategic thinking to ask themselves, who is the next leader that we must have? Let's start from now and change the conversation. All
right. Still on the Punch newspapers, something pretty interesting on the top right corner. It says from Wedabia Mila, Southern secessionists, not different from Boko Haram and ISWAP. Do you agree?
I find that insulting. I find that infuriating. I find that, I would say, intellectually lazy. How can a man at that level make such a statement? It means they have no understanding whatsoever of the problem. He has no clue as to what is going on. Please, what is the Boko Haram statement? What are they looking for? My understanding is that the Southwest agitators, the Southeast agitators are saying Nigeria is not accommodating us on equal partner basis. If we cannot be equal partners, let us have no basis to be a nation. Let us go our way. That is the bottom line. And then a man at the level of the Speaker of the House of Representatives of the Federal Republic of Nigeria says that that mentality is the same mentality as Boko Haram philosophy or ideology. I need to be schooled. He needs to come back and let me understand what Boko Haram is. Because my layman's understanding of Boko Haram to start with is that Western education is sin, is wrong, is bad. And then you equate that with a man who says, guys, if we are a country, let us be equal. And if we cannot be equal, then let us have our way. My brother, you guys are in the media, maybe you know better, but please tell me that those two things are the same. I don't think so.
Well, how dangerous is a narrative like that? And how does this maybe also
absolutely
not help our...
It's absolutely preposterous. It's infuriating. It is disappointing. It is difficult for me to not believe that he's been quoted out of context. I believe that there must be a context that has been taken up, because I know Bajabi Alimila, I know him one-on-one, and I know he's cerebral, I know he thinks right. I don't know how that came about, but please let him come to the public very early enough and put that record straight. That did not come from him.
All right.
Okay, when we look through the papers, we see a story here, and that's about an alleged, attack by the Nigerian Army fighter jets on a community in Yobe State. And on the Daily Trust, it says how fighter jets killed locals in Yobe. And the picture there is very graphic. You can see people who have been injured. You can see people in a makeshift hospital lying on the floor with blood on their backs. And you can see doctors there carrying out, minor surgeries on those persons. And when I took a closer look at the story, we see that this actually happened in Yobe State. It's in Yunusari local government area of Yobe State, Buhari community. And locals say that they were getting ready to go to the market on Wednesday morning when they suddenly heard the sound of a jet ahead, above, and then it started to shell on the citizens, firing at them. 9 people died and so many others sustained injuries, in that community. They're seeking treatment now, medical attention at a government health facility in Gaidam. And, they reached out to the Nigerian Army. The acting spokesman of the Nigerian Army said that they were yet to receive any report about that incident. And it's not the first time that we're hearing something like this, that, there's a alleged bombardment of a community by army forces. What's your commentary on this, Mr. Nyetok?
I don't know where to start with. First, my heart goes out to the civilians, all the people involved. That's number one. Number two is that sometimes there could be a malfunction on radar tracking device, in the sense that maybe the coordinates were not put right. As a result, they went to a wrong target. The third is that the conspiracy theory is rife that there are fourth column or fifth columnists, within the army, within the military generally, in which case they could do one or two things to just make people to go against the military. Those are conspiracy theories. But basically, my most disappointment is with the spokesperson who is telling me that something that heinous happens and they are yet to get intelligence. I refuse that statement completely. Within 10 minutes of such a thing happening, the military intelligence must have a red alert, a flag, okay? If they don't, then there's a major problem. Within 10 minutes maximum of such, because there is a tracking, it's not about one soldier walking along the street and, and firing sporadically. Before any jet takes off, it's not something they do every day. There must be a very detailed operational dynamics that is set up. Are you telling me that one pilot just got into the aircraft and you, like a fleet of cars, takes off, you don't know where he's going to, and then you're wondering, where is this guy, where is not this guy? I expect that every aircraft that takes off is monitored and tracked at the highest level, and any mishap gets immediate intel, and then the body, that the system or the organization gets what is going on. And this is something that happened God knows how long ago. And they are yet to be briefed. I think it doesn't make the military look good. It doesn't at all.
All right. Let's also talk about the economy. It's in the news that Nigeria's inflation records fifth decline in 2021. It says it drops to 17.01% in August. The reactions to this story have been, pretty different. Most people are saying that, you might, put those figures out, but if it doesn't reflect in the lives of the average Nigerian, then, it may not be true or factual.
We live in a country where we really don't appreciate the place of statistics. Statistics is very important, absolutely important. And it is within the context where you use statistics for planning. But when you use statistics for politics, it means that you are going to give me figures that are going to rattle my brain, because I can't seem to. By the time the inflation the figures are declining. First the session, the second one, the third one, it will be obvious that certain things are being done right. And those things reflect on the lives of the people. The average person should feel that, things are getting better. But I don't go to the market, I will agree, but I have constant discussion with my family, with my wife, with my children, with the people I meet. And none of them is telling me that the price of goods are coming down. None of them is telling me that things are getting better. None of them is telling me that, I can feel some good here and there. And yet the figures are telling me something else. I'm not a statistician, but something tells me that if things are getting better, it should reflect in the lives of the average man. And the average man that I relate with on a daily basis, they are not telling me that story. So I don't know how to juxtapose those their figures.
I think it's because it's the annual inflation comparing this year to last year, but the month-on-month inflation, has increased.
But do you also think that Nigerians are too anxious to see that difference, because we're still talking double digit here? Would the effects become more obvious when we maybe get to single digit inflation figures?
When a man is in a theater, in ICU, you don't talk about anxiety. He's constantly anxious. So Nigerians are in the intensive care unit. So we're constantly anxious. We just want something that tells us that, we are improving. So we're asking the doctor, what's going on? And then you want the doctor to come in and you tell him, the numbness in my right hand has subsided. Okay, that's what you want to tell it. And the doctor says, because of the medicine we gave you yesterday. That's what you want. You want to feel something and then tell the doctor, I'm feeling better. The headache has gone down. We want something. We want Nigerians to say, we are feeling better. We are happier. Let Nigerians, let the government borrow money to invest on human capital development. Let them just play down on infrastructure. Don't play down small. Let them just cool down. For instance, if that rail line to Maraba or whatever is not done, nobody will die. But if there's something that you bring about, to improve the living standard of the man on the street by way of healthcare, by way of housing, by way of education, I think Nigerians will feel better. And then successive governments can go more on the infrastructure.
All right, Mr. Nyaichuk. On the papers this morning, especially on the Daily Independence, there's a story here by Lai Mohammed saying that Nigeria would lift the ban on Twitter in a few days. We've been talking about this for a while. The minister has been making promises back and forth that the Twitter ban will be lifted very soon. He's been saying this. You know, he gave Twitter a list of terms and conditions. They have to register with the NCC, have a local office in Nigeria. But we keep seeing these promises. But it seems that, you know, it seems to elude us. We've heard another one today, Nigeria to lift Twitter ban in a few days. How soon should we be expecting this? And do you see this as a possibility, really?
You know, my friend told me that his father told him something, and I find it very instructive. He said, may the man who is always trusted never lie against you. May the man who is always trusted never lie against you. Okay? Very instructive. The reverse is the case. May the man who is never trusted not be put in a position to speak for the government. May the man who is never trusted never be put in a position to speak for the government. I think that my brother, Mr. Lai Mohammed, needs to ask himself one question. Do Nigerians believe me when I talk? The jury is out there.
Okay. All right. Quickly also share your thoughts on the anti-open grazing bills that have been signed in certain parts of the country, Akwa Ibom, in Enugu, and I think in Osun State. Governors seem to be going ahead with their agreements for the 1st of September and, making whatever moves up necessary to protect their people.
Let me say this. First, if you don't talk about Okonjo-Iweala, it means I'm not going to stop until I say something about that.
We're wrapping up with Okonjo-Iweala. Yeah, we're saving the best for last.
I want to salute the government of Akwa Ibom State who have taken that bold step. I want to salute the government of other states that have also done that. I believe that it's a right thing to do. I have said it before and I say it again. I believe that Sambisa Forest should not be a threat to us anymore. Let the government pull all the money they can from everywhere and invest in turning that nightmare of Nigerians into the future hope of Nigeria by investing and moving every cattle rearer and giving them space. They're putting state-of-the-art infrastructure because those who are Nigerians, I'm always careful to draw that line. The Nigerian herdsmen, they have a right to life and living and they're doing business. And just as government supports some other businesses that are done, there was a time they gave grants to transporters and things like that. These herdsmen, they are Nigerians, take Sambisa Forest, pull down the whole system and structure and give them state-of-the-art facilities for them to rear their cattle there. Then let the state be able to manage their own resources and so that there are no longer all these clashes and problems. So I welcome what the states are doing, and particularly my state. They've moved swiftly, and I applaud them for that.
All right, go ahead and speak now in celebration of Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala.
Two things. First is that there is this agitation or this seeming cooperation between the Southwest agitators and the Southeast agitators, and people are worried. They should not be worried. The reason is that why I talked about this is that I went with Madam Okonjo-Iweala to the World Bank to talk about housing for Nigeria. And one of the things that came up was the Land Use Act. When we got there, World Bank itself said, don't bother trying to change it, you will not. And Madam Okonjo-Iweala was the one that led that delegation. Instead, they said, walk around it. Walk around it. What's instructive is that if people will not allow restructuring to take place officially and formally, people are starting to walk around it. What you're starting to see is VAT comes out, and you are talking in terms of fiscal federalism. What you're looking at is that the Southwest agitators are starting to come with the Southeast agitators, and they're starting to say, how can we come together and create a platform where we are equal partners? So instead of just allowing this fight to go on, why don't we sit down as a nation and look at the fundamentals of nationhood, one of the pillars being justice, equity, fairness. Once we do that, then we would have taken the wind off the sail of the agitators. This is just commonsensical, and it is also right and constitutional. Let there be fairness, equity. But on Madam Okonjo-Iweala, I've worked very closely with her, and I continue to do that till today. And I find her somebody that has made us proud in more ways than one. She's a stickler for excellence. She sits on her job. She gets the job done. She is target-driven. She is fair-minded. And when she made me the chairman of the federal government 10,000 housing project, the minister was there. She said, if I want this project to succeed, I want to have the best there. And as far as housing is concerned, where is Architect Nyaito? That guy has made us proud. I want him to anchor this. Unfortunately, it was at the tail end of their program and they had to leave. But why did she look for Architect Nyaito? She said she wants the best in whatever she does. And that's where she is. She doesn't care whether you are from the north, south, east, or west. She just wants round holes in round pegs in round holes, square holes in square pegs. And she has taken that to the world stage and has told the world that a Nigerian, she typifies the average Nigerian, that Nigerians are the best and they know what to do. Go to any country of the world, look at the top management of any organization. You'll find that the excellence factor there is a Nigerian. My prayer is that we will bring this excellence factor to bear in our country and rid all these politicians and bring in cerebral governance, people that can turn Nigeria around. Nigeria can be a different story in less than 4 years, and that is a fact. On account of that, I want to hail my boss and really, really tell her that I'm so proud of her. Every Nigerian, every African, every woman in the world is proud of her. And God bless her.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ezekiel Nyaito. Appreciate your analysis anytime, any day. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now going back to history, and I'm looking at the year 1932. Today, the 16th of September, and it's when a prominent figure in India began a protest fast.
And of course, I'm focusing here in Nigeria on something called National Identity Day. We'll be talking about that after this very short break.
Nigeria's Niger Delta region, from where the black gold fuels Africa's largest economy, where the lines between wealth and poverty has never been thinner. Conflicts, poverty, insecurity, and environmental challenges daily confront the region. How can the Niger Delta story be changed for the better?
Join Mamude Akuga at 9 p.m. every Friday evening on PlusTvAfrica as he probes deep in search of solutions.
Inside the Niger Delta with Mamude Akuga, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region.
Welcome back to The Breakfast. And now for a little bit of history. We're going back to the year 2018. Not a lot of people know this, apparently, but there's something called the National Identity Day. And, on this day in 2018, the Nigerian government adopted the 16th of September to be known as National Identity Day. It was slated for this day for, mostly to promote the Nigerian identity and, to promote the registration of birth also. It's a conversation that a lot of people have not had. And of course, with regards Millennium Development Goals, or Sustainable Development Goals, I beg your pardon, which calls for legal identity for all, including birth registration by 2030. The federal government approved the recognition and observance of September 16th every year as a National Identity Day. A statement by the General Manager of NIMC back then, Abdul Hamid Umar, said the action is a practical move to create awareness on the importance of identification as a modern tool for national development and social cohesion. Nigeria became the first country in the world to formally adopt this day, otherwise called 16.9 as Identity Day. It was initiated at the 4th annual meeting of the ID for Africa movement on 24th of April 2018 in Abuja as a global coalition calling for the recognition by the United Nations. And once again, the purpose of the day is to raise awareness about the important role in identity plays in empowering individuals to exercise their rights and responsibilities fairly and equitably in a modern society. And I remember also that there was a rush at that time, to go get a national ID card and all that. I think we're still building up those numbers. It will take a while before every Nigerian gets completely registered. But it's a step in the right direction, I believe.
Yeah, I believe it is. And in this age, I believe everyone should have a means of identity. We've talked about how it is in the other countries. Once a child is born, all this registration is done. Once you immigrate into a country, at the port of entry, you're getting all those documentation done. But it seems different in Nigeria. When we look back at our parents and our grandparents, how many of them really know their birthdays, the day they were born or the year they were born? Because that system of national identity, was not such a strong conversation then. And this is really important. But it's a good thing that, times are changing. We have so many. There's a national identity card, there's the NIN, so many means of identification. And I believe that we can only get better as, we begin to expand our data pool in the country.
Yeah, and I think it really focuses on, the government's need to know what its population is and know the amount of people that it's planning for. There's I think it's called Social Security number in the United States. So it's a conversation. It's important. For every single Nigerian, not just to have a means of identification, but to have a national ID card, so that you are fully registered and fully recognized by the Nigerian government
and can enjoy all the benefits of the state.
May not enjoy all of it, but have a national ID card. And birth registration also. I remember there was a campaign run by one of the international NGOs a few years ago on birth registration. The importance of getting parents to understand that every child that is born must be registered. People, who give birth in rural areas, a lot of them don't bother with birth registration. They just give birth and go home. So those are part of the important, aspects here and there concerning that.
And on this day in history, just quickly, on the back of that, if you haven't registered for the United Identity number, you definitely should get on that train today. I mean, it's becoming compulsory for everything, for your JAM, for your WAEC examination, to get a driver's license. Is becoming very important. So on this day, the day that Nigeria has adopted September 16th as its National ID Day, Identity Day, you should get a national identity if you haven't. And moving on this day in history, September 16th, 1932, the famous Indian leader Mahatma Gandhi began a protest fast, that's a hunger strike, while in prison. I mean, this story is so remarkable because the person, Mahatma Gandhi, was loved, very loved, revered in the Indian community, and his own way of resisting the British rule and colonization in their country was not protest like we know it. It was not agitation, was not violence. He was a very peaceful man. He had a practice of satyagraha, I believe I pronounced that correctly, in India, where he just does the practice of civil disobedience. He would go on hunger fast, he would go on long walks, and people might wonder, why do you feel that someone going on a hunger fast or a hunger strike has any impact? Because the people, really love and respect Mahatma Gandhi, and they know that he is going on embarking on a hunger fast because of certain policies that the British government is trying to impose on India. People then put pressure on the Indian government, on the British government to say, you need to reverse these policies because we love Mahatma Gandhi. We don't want him to continue this fast to jeopardize his health, make him get out of this fast mood by reversing this policy. So it actually worked, this process of civil disobedience that he, basically propagated in India at that time. So this hunger strike, he began it in 1932 while in prison. And of course, he was jailed again. When he was released from prison, then he began another hunger strike. He was jailed again. And the reason why he was protesting was a policy by the British government to unfairly divide social classes in India. You know, he was saying that when these new policies come in place, it would give so much class, and you know, people who are the poorest in India would be sited in a particular location. They would get little to no social benefits and all of that. He really was against that. And that's why he began this hunger strike on this day in history, September 16th.
The British tried to segregate, you know, based on class in India back then in 1930. I think the law at that time was to you know, like you had mentioned, you know, separate people based on class and give the lowest class of people their own political representation. And Mahatma Gandhi felt that that was going to be, it was going to be difficult because the British had planned to do that for 70 years. And so he had, you know, seen that that was going to be difficult to overturn after, you know, that 70-year period. And it was basically going to divide India's population and, you know, make them, you know, unequal. Based on class, and that's the reason he went on a hunger strike. It lasted for 6 days, and then it was overturned. Another thing, you know, he really was, you know, like you had mentioned, someone who believed in civil disobedience as his method of protesting. He had run a campaign to get India to rule themselves, you know, to be independent of British rule for many years. And his first time he was jailed, it was in 1922, sorry, to 1924, and then he was released and then jailed again in 1930 and then jailed again in 1932 for pretty much the same thing. And he continued this civil disobedience hunger strikes many times, which always was effective. I think the last one was in 1948 when he was trying to, you know, encourage more peace between Hindus and Muslims back then in India. So it was his way of protesting. That worked, mostly because of the love that the Indian people had for him and how much, you know, he was respected across the whole of India. So it did work.
And it's sad that, you know, that same 1948, after he broke that fast, about 2 weeks after he broke that fast, he was sadly assassinated by Hindu extremists. Such a terrible way.
But I'm not sure if hunger strikes will work here in Nigeria.
The question is, people would ask you, oh, you have food that you choose not to eat in an economy that is grappling under the weight of inflation, like we're going to discuss very soon.
Yeah, a lot of people are already living through hunger strikes, forced hunger strikes. You know, but with the government, even outside, if you decide to not eat. I won't call it a strike. Anyway, we'll take a short break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about Nigeria's inflation. The government has reported that it has continued to drop 5 consecutive times now. We're talking about that with an economist after the short break here on The Breakfast. Good morning once again.
This medal has been directed to empower 1,000 persons with disabilities in each state in the next 12 months.
When I start hearing the shoot of guns.
Whatever I've done.
Every public policy has winners and losers, and some will not be very happy with you. while others, usually the silent majority, will be quite happy.
Keep watching Plus Event, Plus Event, Plus Event, Plus TV Africa.
Missed out? Don't be left out as we bring to your screen your favorite social diary events on Plus Events, bringing you fun, information, and of course, entertainment.
Hello everyone and welcome to the latest event show on the planet.
Stay glued to Plus TV Africa every Saturday and Sunday, 4:30 p.m. West African time.
Nigeria, by extension, Africa, is faced with a lot of challenges. The growing youth population with little engagement, that is a ticking time bomb. We are a blessed people with diverse culture and highly cerebral minds who have a lot to say. And yes, we are talking. It is important we drive the right conversation that informs, inspires, influences thoughts and action. If we say there's beauty in our diversity, then let us embrace our diverse culture. We must continue to courageously be the voice of transformation as we are the hope for the future. Yesterday's conversations shape today. What are you saying to shape your tomorrow? We know you have a lot to say, and we are here to hear you.
Praise God, from whom all blessings flow. Welcome to your favorite program, The Moment of Truth, brought to you by the Citadel Global Community Church. Our God is a God of salvation, far above all principality and power, and might and dominion, that regardless of what happens in this season, you will escape. Say to your neighbor, there is no peace for the wicked. The lazy man does not roast what he took in hunting, but diligence is a man's precious possession. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might.
Moment of Truth with Pastor Tunde Bakare, Sundays, 7 p.m. on Plus TV Africa.
Businesses in Africa can be very challenging. In Nigeria, it is particularly intimidating, and successful builders have learned how to navigate a hostile environment to unlock opportunities. But one major challenge businesses face is how to filter through the noise and identify where their ideal customers exist. Get insight and practical steps from industry players and captains of industries. Hear success stories to help you make informed decisions as you scale your business in Nigeria. Watch Business Insights at this time on Plus TV Africa.
You're welcome back to The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. Now, our first major conversation this morning is about inflation. Nigeria's inflation has slowed for a fifth straight month to 17.01% in August. It fell from 17.38% in the previous month, and this simply means that the prices of commodities decreased slightly in August compared to July. Food price inflation was 20.3% in the month under review, while core inflation, which excludes prices of food, fell to 13.41%. The rise in the food index was caused by an increase in prices of bread, cereals, milk, cheese, eggs, oils, and fats. And that's according to the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS. We have two economists joining us this morning. Segun Sopitan is joining us via Zoom, and Gospel Obele is on the phone. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Morning, Nigerians.
Okay. Mr. Shopito, I
Good
want
morning.
to... Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. I want to begin with Mr. Shopito and then over to Mr. Obele to tell us what it means for the MBS to say that our annual inflation has, dropped to 17.01%.
Okay, so thanks for having me and good morning again. So the implication of this basically is that to the layman, it means that the rate at which prices of goods and services that they pay for increases is slowing down. So sometimes when you think about that, so you hear that inflation rate has gone down from 17.5 or 17 or 17.7 or whatever it is to 17.01. The tendency would be to begin to celebrate as, oh, prices are coming down. Well, hello, no, prices are not coming down. What happened is the rate at which prices of goods and services are going up has reduced. So it's no longer increasing at the rate it was increasing before, but it's still increasing. So I think it's important to just note that. And what I'm saying is, I'm sure it's obvious to the average Nigerian because you know what you pay for the things that you buy, and you know what you paid last month, and you know what you paid in December. So prices are still going up, but the rate of increase is slowing down. It is good news, because for the rate to continue to drop, the rate of increase continue to drop, one can only hope that that trend is maintained so that the impact on the purchasing power of the average Nigerian will be mitigated or moderated a bit. So as it stands now, what this means is that hopefully the average Nigerian has just a little bit more to spend on the things that he's buying than he would have last month. But the difference is marginal, so it's not something that anybody is going to notice at the moment until we begin to see significant changes in these numbers. And I think the central bank governor also echoed this. Their expectation and their objective is to bring the inflation rate significantly lower than what it is now at a faster pace. So, for me, it's obvious that more still needs to be done by the monetary authorities to achieve that.
Mr. Obele, do you think this is good news for Nigeria's economy?
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for having me. I think it comes with mixed feelings because, yes, it's slowing down, but at a very ridiculously slower rate than expected. And that's because when you talk about inflation in Nigeria, you're looking at four major dynamics. You're looking at the structural dynamics input. You're looking at the behavioral dynamics input. You're also looking at the social economy, as it were, and all that, and then the institutional bit of things. Now, if you look at what all these four items contribute, in the long to medium term, you realize that it's sort of recycling the same issues that are reinforcing inflation or inflationary pressure on the Nigerian economy. So until the basics are dealt with, around the structural things, around how our consumer behavioral patterns, changes over time, and generally around how institutions are trying to use policy to deal with structural issues, which in this case is a very, very, very clear misalignment, Until those things begins to change, we may not see a significant drop in the inflationary numbers. Let's not forget also that you may have heard that inflation is dropping by 1% or 0.31%, but technically in real-time basis, the price of food is skyrocketing on a daily basis. And that's also because there are deeper issues around the inflationary basket and the questions around, do we need to review the inflationary basket for us to be able to capture close to real-time inflationary figures? Because in real-time inflationary figures, the inflationary position in Nigeria is very much higher than what you currently have now, right? So these are deeper questions that I don't think we're ready for technically.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Segun Shopita and ask if you can in any way, share with us what you think the CBN has done right to keep it on a steady decline, as has been stated. Are there certain things that you've noticed that they have continued to, impute, to make it continue to decline? And is there a way that we can maintain this trajectory?
Yeah, I think the most important measure that the CBN took was to hold the monetary policy rate constant for as long as they have, especially given that we are just coming out of a recession. That's important. So traditionally, when you're trying to stimulate growth because you've had a depression or a recession, as the case may be, what you do is that you want more supply of money in the system so that banks can give credit and therefore, drive growth. And in order to do that, what you typically will do will be to drop your monetary policy rate so that more funds are available in the banking system and then the banks can lend. But what they've done is resisted the temptation to do that so that inflation can be tamed a bit. The flip side of that coin will be if you wanted inflation to really decline, then you actually increase the monetary policy rate. So this has been the main battle and the main debate at every MPC meeting that has held in the last 9 months or thereabouts, since we slipped into recession and since we came out early this year. So I think that's a good measure on their part, but clearly, more needs to be done. I think, like Gospel has said, some of these things are really traditional economic or monetary management policies, and we may need to do more than that if we want to see the kind of impact that, for instance, that the central bank governor has indicated that they would like to see. But so far as that goes, I think they've done a pretty decent job, at least in ensuring that inflation continues to drop.
All right, Mr. Obele, do you agree?
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
I'm asking, do you agree, that has been, a great move by the CBN and a lot more needs to be done? Or would you say that the CBN has maybe done a little different?
To be very honest with you, the current state and the complexity of the Nigerian economy has made it such that factors contributing to this inflationary condition we are having has gone beyond the purview of the central bank. All right, so you have an issue where there is a gross level of fiscal indiscipline, all right? Lack of willingness to build the right infrastructure, political indecisiveness, and then you have high-level cost of governance and all these dynamics that have affected economic management from the fiscal end. Now, the CBN is found itself in a position where they have to manage for the excesses of the fiscal side, as well as do its job as a monetary policy institution. All right, there's almost technically nowhere in the world where you have, there's always some form of trade-off between monetary and fiscal. All right, they're always finding ways to align. But you realize that the economies are really advanced now working. The fiscal side are currently doing their own bit. Then the monetary side are currently doing their own bit. So they now find a place to align and improve on things. So what you find here is a gross opposite. The central bank is in a fix because they're trying to overdo, all right, its function in a sense. And that's because of the fiscal discipline you have. So I agree with Mr. Shag when it comes to the central bank at the moment has tried to keep things constant when you look at it from an NPR perspective. And they're trying to do a lot of policy support programs in the agricultural space. But you realize that in as much as those things have been in place, the real time, now my emphasis on real time, because I have a personal bias for real-time inflation, what it really is, because I don't think our inflationary basket really captures the true story.
Can you share with us, Mr. Obele, can you share a little more with us on your real-time analysis on what Nigeria's inflation is?
Well, no particular figure in mind, but I know that it's way higher than what you currently have now, because if you look at the current inflationary basket, it does not capture for items that are high pressure points in a sense, all right, in the Nigerian economy, such as technological devices, phones, gadgets, all of this advanced use of advanced consumption habits that consumers have come to interact with. And you also have how food dynamics are changing over time, all right, in terms of prices of food and all of that. And don't forget also that the current inflationary basket is such that the NBS collects data from the same pool of people and the same pool of items every month for the past 10 to 15 years. All right. If you look at the US Bureau of Statistics, you see that pool of information changes about every 5 to 10 years because technological and globalization advancements are reorganizing or redistributing that pool. All right. So if we choose to take a sincere look at the situation, realize that real-time inflation is way higher than what we are currently reporting because there's a structural issue around how we're even reporting inflation in the first place. But what I'm trying to say in trying to answer your question, number one, the CBN is in a fix and can only do little. All right, we need to get back to the real structural work of enabling fiscal policy, as well as even redefining the inflationary basket to really capture the state of things. This is the reason why the average Nigerian cannot see the impact of current CBN policies on the price of food or on the price of the purchasing power of their incomes and all of that. So in terms of real-time inflation, it's way higher. I can't put it in perspective to you right now because when you want to go that route, all right, it's much more complex modeling and all of that, which I have not been able to put together for now at this stage. But I know it's way higher in terms of 21st century development economics.
Okay, Mr. Shopito, just on the back of what Mr. Obele is saying, that when we look at this annual inflation, it seems like we have something to celebrate. When we compare the 2021 figures to last year, it seems like, this is declining and it's good news. But the month-on-month inflation doesn't seem to be slowing down anyway. And the real-time inflation, what people see on the ground, when the market woman goes to the market, the figures keep going high. I spoke to some market people yesterday and they were telling me the cost of chicken, a carton of chicken that they buy to make shawarma last month, 2 months ago, has just been on a steady, increase. So could you help us break this down for the common man's understanding? What are the determinants of inflation?
In the case of Nigeria in particular, there's no way you can run away from the conversation around food. A survey released by the NBS 2019, I think it was, also indicated this. So Nigerians spent about 22 trillion naira on food alone, which represented about 60%. I just rounded it up. It was about 57 point something, 60% of their income on food. So as far as the Nigerian situation is concerned, a lot of what is driving inflation revolves around what's happening with agriculture, infrastructure, the exchange rate, very, very critical, because as we all know, we import almost everything that we use in Nigeria, apart from basic food staples, even things like rice, which the government would like us to believe is, probably predominantly produced locally now. In truth, still finds its way into the country. The imported one still finds its way into the country, and we know how much we eat rice. Chicken, like you just mentioned, poultry and all those things are imported. So the exchange rate is a major factor in our case in the inflation conversation. So there's a lot of things, playing around each other. When I spoke about infrastructure, for example, for the food that is produced locally, we know that most of the food that we eat down south, for example, comes from the north. And even if you take the north-south transportation, logistics issue out of the equation, from the farms, even in the south, down to the markets, you have to transport these goods. And I tell you what, the cost of food that you get at the market, that last price that you pay as a consumer, consists more, about 80% of that cost is logistic costs, not the actual cost of production of the material that you're buying itself. So all of these factors come to play when you talk about inflation in Nigeria. So there's a need to address those fundamental issues if we're to significantly tame inflation to the point where we're talking in single-digit terms, really, because that's where we need to be. We need to be in the lower single digits for us to really have a situation where, indeed, we can say that we have tamed inflation and our economy, people are feeling the impact of growth of the economy. Until we have single-digit inflation, whatever economic growth you have would always be wiped away by the wide inflationary trend that we have.
So that means we can't exactly take away insecurity from the conversation.
Absolutely.
So basically, you're saying that if we're able to solve our security challenge, also infrastructure challenge, that you've mentioned,
Absolutely.
fixing our roads, and there's little or no challenge regarding logistics, transportation of food items from one part of the country to another. The prices will be driven down, and the inflation rate will decline as well.
Absolutely. So, for example, two things in terms of the security issue, large swaths of arable land in places like Katsina State, in places like Sokoto State, in places like Benue State, Plateau State, Nasarawa State are no longer accessible to farmers. For them to go to the farm, they must have security, and the military simply can't do that. They are too stretched thin. Then on the transport side, for us to see a significant drop in transport logistic costs, we must have a functional rail system. It's just there is no other way, because our roads are bad. And even if the roads were good, it's not efficient transporting, the volume of goods that we need to move from across, the country by road. It just simply isn't efficient. So, and we know how long it will take to develop, rail infrastructure and all of that. We can see what the government is doing, but, clearly, it is simply under-resourced. They don't have enough money to do what needs to be done. And then that expands the conversation to bigger issues of, government revenues and how to expand that and all of that. So it's all intertwined.
All right, Gospel Obile, I'm bringing you back in, and I want you to respond to one of the concerns that I've seen online with regards Nigeria's inflation. This person here says, and I think it's most of the thoughts of Nigerians that are shared in this message. It says dollar exchange rate 562, as of this morning might be higher in Nigeria, but headline inflation is going down while food inflation and dollar rate are blowing up. And then, of course, the person questions, the CBN and the NBS report of reducing or declining inflation. So quickly respond to that. Is it possible that we can have the exchange rate blowing up and food inflation also, increasing while having headline inflation going down at the same time?
I think that bothers one of the reasons why consumers or the average Nigerian will always come off like that would be the fact that a lot of times our reports in this part of the world doesn't tell the real story or the true story, and which is why I started outrightly from the conversation earlier on that there's an argument also to improve the inflationary basket. Now, that may not seem like an argument everybody's having. We're just looking at by 1% has it gone up, by 1% has it gone down, and that's a bit. We need to move away from those arguments, for things to get better in the sense. All right, so there is a wide gap between what the methodology around the inflationary reports and what the average Nigerian is currently facing. Okay, in some parts of the country right now, the cost of fuel has gone up as high as 250 naira in some parts of the country. So what that means is that will also feed into the cost of logistics and also the prices of food. All right, so and even if you look at the inflationary numbers that are said to be going down, they are not going down by wide margin or by significant margins. It's just maybe 0 point something or 1 point something %. And for me, that's not a significant growth in a sense. So it's to tell you that there is some form of basics or real issues that are currently ongoing in the Nigerian economy that needs to be fixed or dealt with. And like Mr. Shego had mentioned, the exchange rate and all of these dynamics are issues that borders on the structural deficits. So what the central bank and the federal government is trying to do is to use policies to solve structural issues, but rather we need to use structural solutions for structural problems. And one in that, number one, particular country is a function of the level of that country. So you can't expect your productivity base to be low, or you can't expect your consumption base to be higher than your productivity base, and then expect your currency, all right, to be appreciating. It's not possible. It doesn't work anywhere in the world. For currency appreciation, there must be, a fast increase in baseline productivity of that economy versus, all right, consumption productivity of that economy. So these are the different nuances, all right, that plays out.
Gospel Obele, can you hear us?
In how exchange rates are going, and it's really a bad situation, and how affects, all right, the cost that's currently happening in the market.
All right, seems we're struggling a little with Mr. Obele's sound.
Hello, are you there? Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can now. Go ahead.
Yes, so we need to close the gap between what's currently happening in the market and how we are currently measuring for, all right, inflation and all of that. Exchange dynamics, a function of productivity and production and consumption. Nigeria on that scale will be production. So the currency will always be at the mercy, all right, of that dynamics. The more we consume, the more the weaker the currency because we don't have a productive base to grow the power of that currency and all of that. If the exchange rates were a lot more better than it was right now, we would have also seen some form of positive effect on inflationary numbers or the inflationary trends. All right, so we can't say we have not seen a significant drop in inflation because the core economics around the inflation, in a sense. For instance, one of the major reasons why inflation is also high is because there is cost push. Cost push simply means that the cost of price goes up, fuel goes up, and that permeates through the cost of logistics and all that. And we see that prices are increasing in the market. So we need to deal with this from an end-to-end value chain standpoint, as well as revisiting what we're seeking to measure in the marketplace from an inflationary basket point of view.
Mr. Shopiton, can you put an increase in exchange rate side by side with a decline in inflation?
Yes, you can, because of the lagging effect in tracking of these statistics. So remember that what we're seeing now, the inflation figures that we're seeing today are a result of events that happened maybe in terms of policy initiatives and all of that, a result of events that happened maybe 6 months ago. I was actually going to bring this point up. I made a mental note to ensure that I said this, that yes, the authorities, have every right to say, oh, inflation is going down and they're happy. But, it's almost certain that this trend is going to be reversed, probably before the end of the year, because of what's happening with the exchange rate. Because there's a as has been, over repeated and over said, there's a direct connection between the exchange rate of our currency and local prices of goods and services, simply because we don't produce enough. We don't produce what we consume. Because we're importing so many things, both in terms of goods and services, whatever happens to the exchange rate affects the local prices of goods and services, and it's just a natural connection. So inflation rates would likely go back on the upward trend as the year progresses. So I foresee maybe you might drop below the 17% year-on-year region, maybe by next month. But as you approach the end of the year and cross into the earlier part of next year, we'll probably see a reversal in this trend. And the key determinant to this will be that exchange rate is counterbalancing whatever else is happening on the security front and on the infrastructure front and all of that. So yeah, it's possible. And to the comments that you made earlier, that somebody read, I think it's important to get people to understand that These numbers are developed based on standard models that are monitored by a wide range of stakeholders. So it's very, very difficult to cook them up. Whatever numbers you are seeing are reflecting what's happening in reality. But whether it's reflecting them in real time, as Mr. Obele has been saying, is a completely different conversation. So they're not cooked up numbers, but they might not necessarily agree with what's happening today, because there's a lagging effect also in the numbers that you do see.
Okay. So I've heard Mr. Obele speak, and he's mentioned the inflationary basket about 3-4 times. And when we look at how the International Monetary Fund talks about measuring inflation, it's about tracking that inflation basket. So can we talk about this and break this down? What is the inflationary basket, and how do we, add more things to that basket, consider more things that, the household buys, to see if we can get a better analysis, a better measurement of what Nigeria's inflation rate should be? Mr. Shopito, can you hear me? Okay, Mr. Obele, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. While we try to reconnect with Mr. Shopito, please go ahead. Just a minute. Mr. Shopito, can you hear us? Okay. Mr. Obele, over to you now, please.
So, first of all, we like I mentioned, the inflationary basket is a big issue, and it's a conversation that we are not even ready for, because we are focusing so much on the numbers and their insignificant growth, in my own opinion, than what really makes up for inflation that we are leaving out of the conversation. Okay. So, yes, as Mr. Sopito has said, a lot of these are standard statistical models, which I was trying to say earlier on. They are standard statistical models that a lot of stakeholders are keeping a track on. However, if you look at the U.S. Bureau of Analysis, you see that Bureau of Statistics Analysis, you see that the inflationary basket is always constantly being reviewed. And that's one of the major challenges I've had with the Nigerian economics, in the sense, how we think and do economics in Nigeria. It's the same conversation with the state's VAT and central collection of VAT, all right? That you have a particular model or basket of things, in a sense, does not necessarily mean that that model or that basket or that situation cannot be reviewed. Inflationary basket is just simply a collection of items that you track every month, all right? And then when you aggregate, you say, okay, this is the headline inflation, this is the core, and this is the food inflation, this is food inflation. So we need to review that basket. And that borders heavily on the culture around how flexible are we? Are we really ready to go through the intellectual rigor, all right, and stress of trying to redefine that basket, all right, and rework our measurement patterns? The same thing to the Nigerian GDP, all right. If you look at services on the Nigerian GDP block, a lot of people will not agree with what I'm saying. It still doesn't capture the real state of services in Nigeria. You just see IT and communication. What is IT and communication? That's broad, that's vague. Now you have software development, you have cloud computing, you have Microsoft database, all these interesting dynamics. And how are we capturing for all those things within the GDP structure? All right, so we need to rework our methodology. And it's not just for inflation basket, for every other thing else, all right, GDP, poverty, and all that. Look at the Nigerian population, for instance. We are still dealing and arguing around the 2006 figures. Why are we doing that? Because we've not been able to define clearly what our methodology is. All right, and do not forget also, many of these reports are also funded by international organizations. Now, you may say that they are keeping a track, but do not forget that in their own home country, they are upgrading and updating these inflationary baskets, these methodologies and all that. Yes. All right, so why they may not be interested in updating yours is a different conversation in itself. But I am saying that in 21st century economic thinking, inflationary basket must be updated every 10 years, because globalization is happening, all right? Technological advancements are happening, consumer lifestyles are changing, and everything is happening. So with COVID-19 effect now, that's a major milestone to even review the inflationary basket.
So, Mr. Obele,
so this is important.
Yes, I want us to get practical now. Now, you've now let us know the importance of a, every 10-year review or decade review of our inflationary basket. We know that food really comprises the majority of our inflationary basket. Can you tell us what you suggest should be included, the components of the economy that should be included into what we track to measure inflation over time?
So when you look at food, for instance, in the first place, all right, we need to break down the value chain further. All right, there's a growing arm of processed food, there's a growing arm of natural, healthy living, and all of these things. So every food component in those spaces must be included. Okay. That's one. When you think of technology, like I mentioned earlier on, phones, gadgets, laptops, headsets, and all of these interesting dynamics, all those things must be included. When you think of services, cost of training, cost of accessing opportunities, all those things you can put a metric or proxy metrics to those things and capture them in the inflationary basket. All right. A standard way to look at what can be included in the inflationary basket because of time is to look at the US Bureau of Analysis inflationary basket and begin to extract information from those things and add to ours as well as review. But to a large extent, it's not as much as the big question here is not really what we should be including. It's the culture of flexibility and rigor to upgrade the basket. That is where the major issue is. Just like saying Nigeria needs infrastructure, but you don't have the political will to fix infrastructure. That's a big concern.
So on the bigger picture now, when we look at this question of this inflationary basket, when it comes to the Nigerian situation, how can we put in this culture? What do we need to do? Do we need stakeholders to come together for a meeting? Is this something we need to look at the MPC meeting, stakeholders meeting? What kind of setting do you feel that we need to have these conversations on the national level beyond on the media?
All right, so in my own opinion, the same reasons why you have education, the education sector and many other sectors, in fact, the so-called agricultural sector that people are pumping so much money into, the sole reason why you have low gross level development in those spaces is the same reason why you still have the same issues in the inflationary basket scenario and even the GDP methodology scenario. And what is that major issue? We are not really innovative people in a sense. And that's because with innovation comes the need for change. It questions status quo, all right, and many other things. So the political will, the institutional will, even if you have the institutional will, do you have the institutional capacity? All right. Are we really a people who engage high-level statistical modeling and all of these inputs? Yeah, we may have a few people who can do that within the systems. But how many of those people do you have at a very large scale, all right, that kind of take a significant level of these changes I want to see? All right. And with the political economy, but willing to approve of all of these changes, would they even understand the desire, the need for all these things? All right. We're not saying anything different from what's happening in the policy space. All right, these are the big questions that surround policy design as well. All right, our policy design is so ineffective and really poor in this climate. So we're not people who are giving. Look at our educational sector. How many students really do their projects themselves? And these are the next crop of leaders. So are we really an intellectual and cerebral society that is giving to questioning the status quo, rethinking change, enabling change, and building institutions that cannot take the capacity for change? All right, and ensuring that the right legal frameworks and all of these things are in place to effect that change. Okay. So these are the big software issues, like I mentioned earlier on, that we need to look at, not just the change itself that needs to happen.
All right, Mr. Obele, just one question before I turn back to Mr. Shopito. When you look at the inflationary basket that we use here in Nigeria and the fact that it doesn't exactly capture every sector of the Nigerian economy, would you say that our inflation figures by the MBS is not giving us the complete picture?
I confidently say so. Yes, it doesn't. Just the way I will tell you that the GDP doesn't give us the full picture. If you look at, if you download the GDP Excel sheet or even the inflationary Excel sheet, look at those numbers line item by line item. The Nigerian economy is very complex than what those reports represent. All right, and the breakdown of those reports themselves. Things have really gone decentralized, all right, and broken down into bits. All right, then we are trying to really centralize and report them from a holistic perspective. All right, we need to go down into the specifics and break them down. So it's a complex situation, and I don't think the reports capture, just the same way the population reports do not capture. That's the same way there's a huge informal economy. Now, how do you capture an economy that is over 60% informal? How do you capture that sect into your inflationary numbers? These are the big questions. And that's why I would still say that in as much as an average Nigerian citizen does not really understand these dynamics and they need to be educated, they are also right in their own understanding. They are also right because you have 60% of the economy in the informal space. You have 60% of economic activities flowing through the informal space. 60% of foreign exchange dynamics flow through the parallel market. So the argument for exchange rates, all right, is being powered by the parallel market and the official market. Your CBN, e-Naira and all that is an argument for the official market. What is the argument for the informal or unofficial or parallel market? These are the markets that define the changes that we see, and of course the numbers that we see in the real-time space. And our inability to capture that, all right, and let me also say here that the FRS and some significant bodies have developed models to begin to capture taxation or taxes in the informal space. So these things are not impossible. Some institutions are already doing that already, all right? And until we begin to rethink all these things, we are underreporting. That's the word. I'm not going to say the reports are wrong. We are underreporting the current story of things. The same way with poverty, it's been underreported. Human capital development is still being in fact, unemployment. The Nigerian unemployment numbers and underemployment numbers are way higher than we are reporting.
All right.
So we are
before we go back
economic
to
metrics.
before we go back to Mr. Shopito, I want you to stay, Gospel Billy, stay on this. This discussion on underreporting figures. Mr. Shopito had earlier mentioned that it's impossible or it's not very likely to falsify the figures being put out by the NBS. And he also said, that it looks like very likely by the end of the year and of course in the first quarter of next year, these inflation figures very likely will start to rise again. So Mr. Obele, I want you to speak, more on falsifying figures as possibility, or maybe continuation of underreporting. If we get to the first quarter of 2022 and we still do not see inflation figures rising as a result of the exchange rate today, what would you blame for that? Would you say that it's still the CBN doing a great job, or maybe the figures don't seem very, very correct?
So yes, when Mr. Sopichon said that it's very unlikely they are falsifying, he was correct as well, because the issue is that it's not an intention to falsify. It is the structure or the methodology that makes the figure looks as though, all right, they are wrong vis-a-vis the current state of things. Yeah. So there are two different things. So just like you want to say there's information, there's misinformation, and there's disinformation. They are all three different things, all right? So they're not necessarily seeking to falsify those numbers, all right? But rather the structure of the model through which those numbers are being computed are a bit 10 years or a decade backward. So the numbers come out as though they're being falsified. Now, having stated that, we also need to understand that a lot of inflationary numbers and all these things are not reported on real time. When I mean real time, I mean that there's a lag. So you have what we're talking about right now is the August inflation, I think, yeah. So we have that 1 month lag. But even at that, 1 month is still not as significant in a sense, because if you look at GDP, unemployment, and purchasing managers index and inflation, it's highly recommended that the average analyst or person doing business should look more into the inflation and the PMI indicators, because they are a truer reflection of the economy than the GDP. Because the GDP is being reported like a quarter before, all right, but inflation is usually a month before. So they are closely correct variables than the GDP variables in quotes. So it's not necessarily a situation of seeking to falsify, all right? Now, the reason why the dynamics may change in January is because for every festive season, all right, the market sort of redistributes, and it could play out on the numbers, as it were. But in this case, I really don't see the exchange rate dropping. And if at all inflation will drop, it will still be at this 1%, 0.5, 1% insignificant drop, in my opinion, which I think we should stop putting an argument on, all right? Because until those drops are significant, then nothing is really happening in the sense. Because let's not forget that 60% of what's happening is not even being captured, and it's in the informal space.
Okay, all right, back to Segun Sopiton. And let's take a break from the inflation direct and talk about the exchange rate. It's currently 560 above. Some say 62, some say it might hit 65 by the end of today and even further. Tell us about your fears with regards to the exchange rate. What seems to be going on? It seems very, very chaotic over there.
The fears are the same fears that are shared by everybody. And, if you operate within the Nigerian economy, you definitely have to be worried at what's happening. Two things. One is what's happening in the parallel market. And then the other is what's not happening in the official markets, in the official windows. So as it stands, like you reported, as of today, exchange rate in the parallel market has hit 562 naira to the dollar. And, if you cast your mind back just 6 months or 7 months, that number would have seemed preposterous. Yes. Because we were still running at about 475 and then we hit 490. And now we're talking 562. And there's a very, very good chance that before the end of the year, we'll hit 600. So, that's deeply disturbing, given that, as has been repeatedly said, we're consuming, we're consuming economy, we're net consumers, we don't produce, right? So the only thing, and we import everything we consume, so the only thing that's going to happen is that prices are going to keep going up. So that there's that. And then now, there's also now the conversation around the policies that the central bank, has been following with regards to the foreign exchange rate management, exchange controls, and policies. This continued insistence of the central bank to maintain a multiplicity of exchange rates is a concern. The fact that the gap between the parallel market rate and the official exchange rate, the NAFEX rate, which as at yesterday was still around 412 naira to the dollar. Yeah. That is an incredible 150 naira.
And why is that? Because I remember years ago it was maybe a 10, 20 naira difference. So how have we gotten to 150?
It's so terrible. So we've been talking about convergence, trying to converge, the official and the parallel market rates. And every CBN administration, for as long as I can remember, has always tried to grapple with this challenge. And at a point, we were succeeding. What I think has happened in this case is the artificial controls that the central bank has continued to hold on exchange rates, the discretionary application of the multiplicity of rates across different sectors. So what that has done is that, Forex is available to certain sectors at a particular rate. It's available to other sectors at another rate. And then there are players within the system that can access those rates and use them in the unofficial markets. So you are creating an arbitrage opportunity for powerful people that have connections. And there is no way that arbitrage, because we're all capitalists by nature. If I have access to those opportunities, I will use them. Nobody is altruistic. Nobody is thinking about the global peace and the good of the world. Everybody is thinking first about themselves, self-interest, and then about the good of others. So if I have access to exchange rates at 350 naira, for example, to the dollar, and I know that if I get those dollars and I can be creative, then I can go sell them, in the parallel market, then clearly I will do that. And I think that even the ex-CBN governor had made that point strenuously that, these policies are simply creating terrible imbalances, within the system. And it's just doing all sorts of havoc. The latest one that the CBN has done is, this ban, I won't say ban, restriction of access by BDCs to the official, window. And what that has done is it's further strangulated the supply side in the unofficial window, because we all know that the BDCs, even though they're only supposed to provide dollars or foreign exchange to consumers based on presentation of documentation and at a specific rate. But we all know that once the BDCs get these monies, they put them in the parallel market straight, and they are running at parallel market rates. So once you've taken them off the table because you want to prevent them from taking advantage of the arbitrage opportunity you created in the first place, then you are worsening the supply side question. And the only thing that can happen is that exchange rates will get worse.
All right, Mr.
There's a
Shopito.
lot of confusion in the exchange rate policies of the CBN right now, and it's, as we can all see now, it's chaos.
Indeed. I want to get final thoughts on this. Mr. Obele first, and you, Mr. Shopito. So, Mr. Obele, can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you've talked about fiscal policies and the need for synergy between the fiscal and monetary side to balance up Nigeria's economy. Well, your final words, please, on what we can do as a country to lower our inflation rates and achieve a stable economy.
Yes, I'll still go back to the 4 things I mentioned earlier on, which was why I started with the number 1, structure. We need the right structures to uptake the level of growth and significant decline in these scary numbers, as well as the impact on livelihoods, all right, the positive impact on livelihoods. So once infrastructure is in place, inflationary numbers will drop. Once security is in place, those things will drop, and then the prices in the marketplace will drop, and all of that. Incomes can become more significant. So the structure, and with structure also, we're also talking about growing a productive base for the economy.
Okay, Mr. Obele.
We're talking about.
Yes, Mr. Obele. Could you wrap up in 30 seconds, please?
All right. So structure, number 1, behavioral patterns, consumer behavioral patterns, institutional capacity and effectiveness is also very important. Then the right policies and alignment between the fiscal and the monetary side. These are 4 major areas that I believe that they can be complementary enough in reducing these numbers. If you take out one of those four, there'll be a gap somewhere in its execution.
All right. Mr. Shopito, final words from you regarding stabilizing our economy.
I think that sorry about that. I think that what our authorities need to do right now is to focus more on the fundamentals, and I think that's the point that Mr. Obele has been making, right? The most critical challenge and job for this government and any other government we will have in the next 10 years is to address the revenue distribution structure of the economy at the moment from this dependence on foreign exchange. Until we break that, our economy will not develop and will not grow.
All right. Thank you very much, Segun Shopito, an economist, and of course, Gospel Obele also, for both joining us and sharing your thoughts very, very brilliantly on the discussion today.
Thank you both.
We wish you a very interesting Thursday ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, and
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. This is where we will be wrapping up this morning. Has been a very interesting conversation. Thank you very much for joining us. Remember where to catch up with any of the conversations you may have missed. It's all on social media at PlusTvAfrica, Facebook, Instagram, and our YouTube channel.
Exactly. Thanks again for joining us this very beautiful Thursday, the 16th of September 2021. I am Anetta Felix.
And I am Osaogi Ogbon.
For upcoming artists to blow in Nigeria.
Welcome to Plus Trending. I am Booking November, your host, saying thank you for joining us on today's episode.
Welcome back. It's tea time on Plus TV Africa.
Practice makes perfect. I'm not perfect yet, but I'm a lot better than I used to be.
He's a king. He's entitled to marry 100 if he wants to.
me, I wanted to change that culture. I didn't believe that until you see a white man or you see a foreigner in the kitchen before you can believe that, you know, good food is going to come out of that kitchen.
You can leverage on each other's spaces and, you know, sell. We believe in Nigeria, right? We believe that Nigeria can get better. We, the youth, are the ones that can make it better.
And my products are proudly made in Nigeria.
Made in Nigeria, showing every Tuesday at 10:30 p.m. and repeats on Saturday at 8:30 a.m.
Thanks for joining us on Plus News Brief. I am Osaogie Ogbonwa. The Federal Executive Council has approved 38.4 billion naira for the completion of some inherited road projects in 5 states of the Federation. Minister of Works and Housing Babatunde Fashola made this known when he briefed State House correspondents at the end of the council meeting, presided over by President Muhammadu Buhari on Wednesday in Abuja. According to him, the benefiting states include Benue, Bayelsa, Anambra, Imo, and Nasarawa. He added that all the affected projects were inherited from previous administrations. Also addressing correspondence on the outcome of the meeting, the Minister of Water Resources, Suleiman Adamu, disclosed that the council approved 10.7 million naira as augmentation for the completion of the Middle Rima Valley Irrigation Project in Sokoto State.
20-kilometer dualization of Yenegua Road Junction to Kulu, to Utuke, and to Bayelsa Palm in Bayelsa State. That contract was awarded in December 2014 on the eve of the tenure of the last administration. And it couldn't even take off because of those militancy issues at the time, and also very limited budget provisions. It is one of the contracts that we have since reactivated with the Sukuk. So the dualization of that 20-kilometer road is progressing, but there are some additional works that need to be done. There are also results of further investigations that support a revision of the contract by 7.947 billion, revising it from a total of 26.498 billion now to 34.446 billion. And this was approved by Council.
President Muhammadu Buhari has sworn in 3 national commissioners of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. They include Dr. Baba Bila, representing Northeast Zone, Professor Sani Adam, representing the North Central Zone, and Professor Abdullahi Abdu, representing the Northwest Zone. The swearing-in took place on Wednesday, just before the commencement of the Federal Executive Council meeting, which held at the conference room of the First Lady's office at the State House. Speaking after the ceremony, the INEC chairman, Mahmoud Yakubu, said they want to assure Nigerians that they would continue to do their best and continue to improve the transparency and credibility of elections in Nigeria.
Well, we want to assure Nigerians that we'll continue to do our best conscientiously, and to continue to improve the transparency and credibility of elections in Nigeria. The new commissioners that have just been sworn in are bringing with them accumulated intellectual and administrative experience and I'm confident that they will add value to our work.
I want to assure Nigerians that we will be very honest and sincere in our activities to ensure that all elections we will conduct will be fair, free, and credible, because that is what the nation looks up from us.
We intend to work diligently to ensure that free and fair elections are realizable in Nigeria, to fulfill the objective of the president to deliver free and fair elections. And we are here to assist the chairman to achieve these laudable objectives.
I believe we'll take the electoral system to greater heights by the grace of God. We'll support the chairman so that we deliver to Nigerians an excellent electoral results.
And the House of Representatives has received a bill to control small and light weapons from President Muhammadu Buhari. Mr. Femi Gbajabiamila, the Speaker of the House of Reps, while reading the letter from Buhari dated August 26th, said that the bill is for the consideration of the House. Gbajabiamila said the President also sent a letter on August 27th for a bill to repeal the Explosives Act of 1994. Also, the President wrote a letter on August 24th to seek a concurrence approval for external borrowing for the 2018 to 2021 to enable the federal government complete its ongoing projects across the country. Meanwhile, a new member, Rep. Ahmed Mohamed, was sworn in as the House of Representatives member representing Liri Federal Constituency of Kaduna State. And several persons have reportedly been killed and others injured in an aerial bombardment in Buwari community, and that's in Yunusari local government area of Yobe State. A source in the community confirmed the incident, and those injured in the incident are receiving treatment at the general hospitals in Gaidam and Gasho. Another source, Haruna Ali, said that 3 Toyota Hilux vehicles brought the injured victims to Gaidam General Hospital. The community is located 20 kilometers from Kanama, the headquarters of Yunusari local government area in the northeast part of the state. And the federal government has reassured Nigerians that the face-off with micro-blogging site Twitter is almost over and the ban will soon be lifted. This was disclosed to State House correspondents on Wednesday by the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, after the week's virtual federal executive meeting at the Presidential Villa, Abuja. On August 11, 2021, Mohammed, during a post-FEC briefing, had assured Nigerians the ban on Twitter would be lifted in a matter of days, as both Nigeria and the company had already made considerable progress in their discussions. This is even as the ban entered 100 days on Tuesday, with the economy reportedly losing as much as 246 billion naira.
If the operation has been for about 100 days now, I can tell that we're just actually talking about just a few more days. All we're trying to do is, the exchanges have been going on, but we need to dot the I's and also cross the T's. But I can assure Nigerians that we're not unmindful of the anxiety of Nigerians, and both parties, are working very hard to put a closure on the matter. And like Twitter itself said, the exchanges have been very, very productive on both parties. It has not been adversarial at all, and it's quite, it's quite respectful.
Still in the news, as the 2023 general elections draw closer, some youths in the southwestern part of the country have endorsed the Kogi State Governor, Yahaya Bello, as the next president of the country. The youths said that it was time they took over the mantle of leadership in the country. Speaking at a program which held in Lagos, the Director General of the group, Oladele John, said they were ready to support Bello because he is what is needed in the country to replicate what he has done on development, youth empowerment and security in Kogi State.
Kogi State today, the youth are the decision makers. And that is why the administration of His Excellency Yahaya Bello is rated #1 in security. That is why administration of His Excellency is rated #1 in youth and women empowerment. So now, if we give him chance come 2023, we are saying that the scenario we're having in Kogi State today will be the same that we're going to have in Nigeria at large. What is this telling you? That we have had youth who bring Nigeria to what we have today. And that agility is required to govern over 200 million people.
The essence of this gathering today is that the Southwest youth, through their various youth leaders, have gathered here in Lagos, Nigeria, to say that Yaya Bello, being the youngest governor in Nigeria, being a man who has proven his track record as a youth ambassador, being a man who has unified a diverse state like Kogi State, being a man who has been able to secure Kogi State amongst all the northern states that have currently been bedeviled by insecurity, is a man that we want as president come 2023. So sitting here today are youth across the 6 states of the Southwest saying that Yaya Bello is a man they want for president come 2023.
And the Osun State Governor, Boyega Oyetola, has signed the bill banning the practice of open grazing in the state into law. Osun Assembly passed a bill to regulate animal grazing and establishment of cattle ranches and other related matters. Speaking of the Assembly, Timothy Oweye said the bill passed will prevent the destruction of farms by open rearing and grazing of livestock. He added that the law will prevent killings, sexual molestation, protect the environment from degradation and pollution caused by open rearing and grazing of livestock. He noted that the conveyance of livestock on foot from one destination to another in the state is prohibited, except such movement is by rail wagon or truck or pickup wagon and is within 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. A governorship candidate under the auspices of the All Progressive Congress in Adamawa, Abdullahi Ahmed, says the state and Nigeria in general will have lasting peace between farmers and herders only if the governors adopt the Ruga option. Ahmed, who disclosed this in Yola, said the incessant clashes between farmers and herders in the country would only come to an end if the Fulanese are given a befitting place in all states across the federation to rear their cattle. He, however, blames the governors for fueling the crisis between farmers and herders by not doing what he described as the needful.
I will go for Ruga option, and I can tell you how I'll do it. This is a state that have a lot of cattle, and we are proud to have a lot of, much more than any other person in Nigeria. What you do is just allocate an area. This area, allocate it purposely for the cattle only. If you go out of this place, you are breaking the law, and you should be penalized. That's the Ruga option. Provide all the facilities, schools, water, even veterinary clinics, they should be there. And the farmers go free. They'll be farming. No cattle will go and encroach, no fighting, nothing. It's a very simple concept brought by the federal government, but people kicked against it simply because they don't want to sit down and listen.
From Yola now down to Lagos, where, or still on the same story, Ahmed also promised to take legal action if the government of Amadu Fintiri goes ahead to collect the 100 billion naira bond he planned to acquire, which, according to him, will make the state run into penury. On the value-added tax controversy, he urges the state government not to support the reforms because it is not the viable option at the moment.
It is only natural. Lagos and Rivers will go to court and demand for whatever they want in the court because they are comfortable, economically they are comfortable at their position. But for Adamawa State to support that reform, it means not paying salary at all. It means not even living because those are monies that are contributed by states all over, given to federal government, and federal government share, including Adamawa State. We are sharing in that money. It's very funny. There is only 2 people that can do that. It's only the governor does not understand the word VAT, or he does not understand the reform in VAT regime.
And from Adawa now to Lagos State, where the governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, has inaugurated a 12-member state road safety advisory council, urging them to contribute to making Lagos roads safer. Governor Sanwo-Olu, who chairs the board with his deputy, Obafemi Hamzat, an alternate chairman, says the initiative demonstrates the premium his administration places on the lives of Lagosians. PlusTvAfrica's Lagos State House correspondent, Love Ikuku Oyedokun, tells us more in this report.
Road safety is now a global issue of concern, given the number of avoidable crashes, which often leads to loss of thousands of lives annually. 2018 Global Status Report by the World Health Organization shows that road traffic accident is one of the leading causes of deaths in the world, with at least 1.3 million deaths. The Sanwo-Olu government looks to be up against the game with the inauguration of this council. Commissioner for Transportation Frederick Oladeyinde, who describes Lagos State as a trailblazer, says the inauguration of the State Road Safety Advisory Council will not only come forward with clear road safety blueprints, but also stem the tide of road traffic crashes and its attendant socio-economic losses.
In line with the team's agenda, Lagos State is inaugurating a 12-man Lagos State Road Safety Advisory Council. The council is expected to produce a clear road safety blueprint and also stem the tide of road traffic crashes, including its attendant social economic losses.
The government believes that one of the most important measures for the reduction of fatalities is to put a good infrastructure regime in place.
Part of the strategy we're implementing include ensuring that our roads infrastructure complies with global standards for safety, capacity improvement of relevant agencies, including the Vehicle Inspection Services VIS, the Lagos State Traffic Management Authority LASMA, the Lagos State Emergency Management Authority LASEMA, and the Lagos State Fire Service.
Speaking exclusively with PlusTvAfrica, Sector Commander Federal Road Safety Commission Lagos, Olusegun Ogugbemide, says the inauguration is a welcome development.
It is all-encompassing. It's something that involves all the agencies, the government, the non-governmental agencies, the various traffic management agencies, all tending towards creating a kind of short-term process for Lagos State and by extension Nigeria.
Earlier, the Commissioner for Transportation Frederick Oladeyinde said the inauguration of the body demonstrated Nigerians' commitment to addressing the challenges of road safety in the country. From Lagos House Marina, Love Ikuku Oyedokun, reporting for Plus TV Africa.
Two stories in other parts of Africa now. ECOWAS said it will meet Thursday to discuss possible steps after Guinea's president was ousted in a coup earlier this month. On Wednesday, the army rulers held talks with the country's civil society, just a day after meeting with politicians and leaders of political parties. ECOWAS already suspended Guinea last week, and that was after a special forces commander toppled 83-year-old President Alpha Condé, calling his ouster a clear violation of the group's regional charter. A delegation from the 15-member ECOWAS group was sent to Conakry to meet with coup leader Lieutenant Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya. They'll also visit Condé and demand a civilian-led transition. ECOWAS imposed economic sanctions in Mali last year, but lifted them after Mali's ruling military committed to restoring civilian rule. And Gabon's defense ministry says the United Nations will withdraw Gabon's 450-strong peacekeeping contingent from the Central African Republic over sexual abuse allegations, a scourge that has long tarnished interventions. Central African Republic, one of the world's poorest countries, has been chronically unstable since it gained independence from France in 1960. The former French colony is currently suffering from the aftermath of a brutal civil conflict that erupted in 2013 after a coup against then-President Francois Bozize. United Nations Multi-Dimensional Integrated Stabilization Mission, otherwise called MONUSCA, was deployed in the UN or by the UN in April 2014 to end the conflict, pitting the Seleka coalition of armed groups that overthrew Bozize against militias supporting him. The conflict has dramatically reduced in intensity, but MONUSCA still has 15,000 personnel in the country, of whom 14,000 are in uniform. And outside Africa now, French President Emmanuel Macron said on Wednesday that the French military forces had killed Islamic militant Adnan Abdul Walid al-Sharawi, the leader of the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara. It's another major success in the fight against terrorist groups in the Sahel, Macron said in a tweet. He did not disclose the location of the operation. Sahrawi was the historic leader of the Islamic State in the Sahel region of West Africa, and his group targeted U.S. soldiers in a deadly attack in 2017. Macron's office said Also added, in August 2020, Sarawi personally ordered the killing of 6 French charity workers and their Nigerian driver, it added. The missiles fired by North Korea were a test of a new railway-borne missile system. This is designed as a potential counter-strike to any forces that threaten the country. The missiles launched on Wednesday flew 800 kilometers, about 497 miles, before striking a target in the sea off North Korea's east coast, KNCA said. Photos released by state media showed an olive green missile rising on a column of smoke and flame from the roof of a train parked on tracks in a mountainous area. South Korean and Japanese authorities said they had detected the launch of 2 ballistic missiles from North Korea just days after it tested a cruise missile that analysts said could have nuclear capabilities. To business news now. The Nigerian Customs Service has accused ministries, departments and agencies, MDAs of government, as well as the Nigerian elite of aiding and abetting smuggling through patronizing smuggled vehicles. The Assistant Controller General of Customs in charge of modernization, Saidu Galadima, said this at a meeting with the House of Representatives Committee on Customs in Abuja. And here's the report.
It was supposed to be an interactive session between the committee and customs on ways to proffer solution to the cumbersome clearance and transfer process of containers from mother ports to other terminals, including dry ports across the country. After much deliberations, both parties agreed that the cumbersome clearing processes be trickled down from 18 levels to just 3. This was after the customs confirmed just 6 levels to the committee. But the Assistant Controller General of the Customs Service quickly pointed accusing fingers on the MDAs for encouraging smuggling in the country.
Nigerian Customs Service need your support in this regard. Unfortunately today, the big men in Nigeria, I didn't say National Assembly members, all their escort vehicles, HELOCs, are smuggled vehicles. MDAs, ministry and departmentals of government today, they patronize smuggle HELOCs. And that's why if you go to our system, the number of HELOCs importation has dropped, but you find there hundreds in town.
Chairman of the committee, Honorable Leke Abejide, at this point appealed to the customs to offer a 3-month window for defaulters to pay duties on vehicles smuggled into the country. He says this move could generate about 1 trillion naira for the federal government.
Now that we need more revenue, is to give maybe 3-month grace for everybody to come and pay duty. Whoever does not pay, this will go to jail.
Abejide urged the customs to improve their checks to stop such development. He said the House was working on the amendment to the Customs Excise Management Act to enable the agency work more effectively.
Customs need to take this 4% FOB collection. Once they get this done, customs will be okay. Most of these complaints will not be there. But as it is now, they are incapacitated. I know it because I know the system, and I have seen what they are getting is barely to pay their salaries. So when the act comes, we will sit down on it and look at it and see how we can help them.
Federal lawmakers urge the customs to embrace a one-stop-shop mode of clearance, especially as customs activities are now automated as claimed by them.
Now to business news. Britain's Prince Harry and his wife Meghan on Wednesday graced the cover of Time magazine's annual 100 Most Influential People in the World. The list also includes singers Billie Eilish and Britney Spears and Olympic gymnast Simone Biles. Harry and Meghan, who quit their royal duties last year and moved from Britain to California, are featured on one of 7 worldwide covers highlighting the honorees. The photo shows the couple, who are titled the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, dressed casually with a background of trees. Time magazine editor-in-chief Edward Felsenthal said, "The 100 list features extraordinary leaders from around the world, and these are persons working to build a better future, who in a year of crisis have leaped into the fray." To sports now. Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp said his side got carried away by their own football. And this is after a topsy-turvy 3-2 victory over AC Milan in the opening Champions League Group B clash on Wednesday. With fans inside Anfield for a Champions League match for the first time in 18 months, Liverpool began in electrifying fashion. It threatened to run riot after Fikayo Tomori's own goal handed them a 9-minute lead. Liverpool had 13 goal attempts in the opening 15 minutes, but incredibly found themselves trailing at half-time. Ante Rebic and Brahim Diaz struck for Milan shortly before half-time. But goals by Mohamed Salah and Jordan Henderson's 69-minute power driver secured an important 3 points. And that was in a daunting group that also includes Porto and Atletico Madrid, who drew 0-0. After the empty stadiums for last season's Champions League campaign, Klopp reveled in a return to the special atmosphere created by the Cup on European nights at Anfield, punching the air repeatedly after the final whistle.
With 10-15 minutes where we lost a little bit the plot, whatever, were not compact enough anymore. It got carried away with our own football pretty much, made it then complicated, which we shouldn't have done in own possession. And last line slightly too deep, midfield closing the gaps anymore and stuff like this. So they could pass through, they scored 2 goals. In a moment like this, obviously the game can be decided, but not tonight because we could adjust in the half time and did that. Played again really good football and scored 2 wonderful goals and so won the game, which everybody knew before already, but now probably definitely everybody knows. AC Milan came from pot 4 in this group. Very funny. So that's the quality in that group, and we have. So it makes it's really good that we won this game tonight because obviously you need each point in this group to get through.
Well, that's the news brief. For more, please follow us at PlusTvAfrica on Facebook and Instagram, and do subscribe to our YouTube channel at PlusTvAfrica and PlusTvAfrica Lifestyle. I am Osaogie Ogbowa. Thanks for watching.
It for upcoming artists to blow in Nigeria.
Welcome to Plus Trending. I am Bookie November, your host, saying thank you for joining us on today's episode.
Welcome back. It's tea time on PlusTvAfrica.
Practice makes perfect. I'm not perfect yet, but I'm a lot better than I used to be.
He's a king. He's entitled to marry 100 if he wants to.
Alex, can we record?
Kenyan music producer Prester George imagined how difficult it must be for village artists to get their songs on the radio, let alone become famous. And that's where George found his calling.
I thought it wise to bring these studios to the local people so that at least they can compete or they can sell their products.
George takes everything he needs to record complete albums on location in remote areas in just a few days. From soloists to church choirs, this traveling producer's goal is to find music that otherwise wouldn't get distributed.
This opportunity where we can get a studio where we are it will make us to air out the good talents that we have, which could not be heard at all.
Making his clan's dream a reality can come at a cost for George, as many village artists cannot afford